Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in. Today I've got a tip that will cover all of your questions about how do you prevent fish from biting your drop shot weights. And I've got a simple solution for that, and it works wonders, and it will actually increase the number of bites that you have. Before I get into that, I just want to remind you guys to subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. By subscribing, you get entered into my monthly prize drawings, so there's really no reason not to subscribe if you're watching the videos on a regular basis, and it gets you entered into a chance to win some sponsored prizes. So guys, hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Since I've started doing my YouTube channel, one of the most common questions that I've gotten from you guys out there is, how do you prevent fish from biting your drop shot weight? Well, it is something that we see a lot. You know, if you do bed fishing or if you fish in clear water, it's amazing to me how often the fish will bite the weight and not bite. They could care less about the bait that's hovering above them. And you know, you see this not just with bass, but you see this with panfish as well. Quite frequently, the bluegill will hoard to the weight and peck at your weight, and the bait's sitting up above them, and they just really could care less. You know, I was just at the St. Lawrence River practicing for my last tournament of the year, and there were a few fish still on beds, and there was one fish specifically that if you put a drop shot in his bed, he would bite that weight every time. Meanwhile, I've got a bait floating above his head 12 inches, and he just really could care less. So it does happen way more frequently than I think we think it does. You know, if you're getting taps and getting bites consistently and not setting the hook, they're probably keying in on your bait for that day. So how do you correct that? Well, if you've got your drop shot, and in this case I've got this is a Berkley Max Scent flatworm, and yes, I've got a RoboWorm size 1 hook through there, and I've got it threaded up. Normally I would be nose hooking a flatworm, but I've got such a limited supply that I was running the bigger hook through it to see if it made much difference, and I can't say it did. I mean, I feel like, well, I was doing it because I didn't want to lose the bait, but I don't think it had any effect on the fish that I was catching. It seemed like they were eating this just as good as they would a nose hook. So it's something to experiment with, something I'm still trying, like using a larger hook in some of the smaller baits. I also think it allows the bait to stand out further and more parallel in the water, but that's another whole nother video. Anyways, so if you go down to the weight, you know, generally people are throwing some form of drop shot weight, and that's what the problem is. The fish are biting that. Guys, simple solution: replace it with a Ned rig. So I've got a drop shot here tied on with a Ned rig below it. When those fish are biting the weight, they'll bite the Ned rig, and you'll catch them on the Ned rig. So you're actually increasing your number of bites, and quite frequently you'll find that you do have a shot at doubles. Now, you know, I do want to stress that if you're fishing tournaments, you better make sure that you're allowed to do this. In my tournaments, this would be considered 2 separate baits, so I'm not allowed to do it. But if I'm out fun fishing, I 100% can do this. Check your state laws too. I don't know of any state laws that would have issue with it, but it's 2 separate baits in a lot of rule books. So just make sure you're clear on that. But if you're allowed to do it, you will potentially catch 2 fish on 1 cast, and at the same time you're covering fish that are only looking at biting your weight. Meanwhile, you've still got the fish that are more interested in the suspending bait of the drop shot, and it works great. I do want to point out though that if you're using really light line, you're going to break off quite a bit if you do end up getting doubles. And if you're fishing smallmouth and spotted bass, a lot of times that'll happen because one fish will bite, and then you've got another bait, you know, regardless of which one it is, you know, that's trailing the fish that's on it. So if there is another fish there, they will bite that other bait, and at which point, if you're using 6-pound test, chances are you're going to break one of those fish off. So it's not ideal from that standpoint. So I would recommend going up to a little bit stronger pound test line, so a 10 to 12 pound test, which doesn't have much effect if you're fishing water that's not necessarily gin clear. But that's how you do it, guys. The other option, and I've done this more with power shotting, and in situations where I want to throw a football head jig, that's a good time to add a drop shot above your football head. So if you're just dragging your bait, throwing a drop shot, a worm above your football head jig has the same effect. So at that point, you're catching fish on the jig, and you also have the potential to catch fish on the drop shot that's above the jig. Really basic stuff, really, nothing special. Just set it up. Instead of putting your drop shot weight, you're either putting a jig on the bottom or you're putting your Ned rig on the bottom. Either way, it's going to increase the number of bites you catch, and it's a great process. The only other time I will say I don't like to put a bait on the bottom is if I'm fishing areas that have some grass growth on the bottom, because that will get you stuck. It'll be a pain in the butt. But if you're fishing a clean bottom, it's definitely a good way to go to give the fish a different presentation and to offer a bait at the same time to fish that are only interested in either a suspending bait or a bottom bait. So guys, give it a try. I hope this was helpful. I hope this solves that question of people saying, what do I do when fish are biting my bait all the time? It's better to do this than to try to figure out a way to put a hook on a lead weight. Anyways, guys, if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and stay tuned. We have tips and tricks that come out on a daily basis. Thanks for watching.